Every evening when the sun went down behind the maple trees, the little town of Maple Ridge turned quiet. Shops closed early, the streetlights came on one by one, and families went home for dinner. But there was one person who never left when everyone else did. A woman named Clara Evans always sat on the same old wooden bench near the town park. No matter how cold or lonely the night was, she came with a small notebook in her hand and sat still for hours, looking at the stars or the playground that stood across from her. Nobody really knew her story. Some said she was waiting for someone. Others said she was just lost and had nowhere to go. But Clara never disturbed anyone. She just sat, silent and calm, night after night, like part of the park itself, thought Sheriff Tom Hargrove, a kind man in his 40s with a patient smile, had noticed her many times during his nightly patrols. At first, he didn't think much of it. People sometimes came out to clear their minds or enjoy the cool air. But as the weeks passed, he saw her there every single night. Rain, fog, or frost, it didn't matter. She always came to that same bench and left quietly before dawn. He began to wonder about her. Who was she waiting for? Did she have a home? Why that bench, and why always alone? One night, when the autumn wind was sharp and most people stayed indoors, Tom parked his patrol car nearby and watched her from a distance. The street lamp above the bench flickered softly, and the light touched her face. She looked peaceful but sad, as if she was carrying something heavy inside her heart. After a few minutes, he walked over slowly. He didn't want to scare her. "Evening, ma'am," he said gently. "You okay out here?" Clara looked up, surprised but not afraid. "Yes, Sheriff," she said softly. "I'm fine. Just sitting for a while." "It's getting cold tonight," he said. "You live around here?" She gave a faint smile. "I do, not far. I come here every night." He nodded, trying to be polite. "I've noticed. Is there a reason you always sit here?" Clara looked away, her eyes fixed on the playground swings that moved slightly in the wind. "I'm waiting," she said quietly. "For who, if you don't mind me asking?" She held the little notebook tighter in her hands. "My son," she whispered. Tom's voice softened. "Your son? How old is he?" She smiled faintly, but her eyes glistened. "He was 10 when he left. That was 8 years ago." The sheriff felt his heart tighten. "That's a long time, ma'am. Did something happen to him?" She nodded slowly. He was supposed to visit his father in the next town. It was a short trip. He said he'd come back when the stars looked the same. That was the last time I saw him. Tom didn't know what to say. He could hear the quiet pain in her voice, like a wound that never healed. She looked down at her notebook again. "He loved this park," she said softly. "He used to run from one end to the other, laugh so loud that people turned to look. He'd wave at me from the swing, and I'd wave back. This was our place." She paused and gave a small, trembling smile. "He told me, 'Mama, even if I go far away, you'll find me when the stars are the same. So, I come here every night. I wait because maybe one day he'll keep his promise.'" Sheriff Tom stood quietly beside her. He didn't have the heart to tell her what he was thinking. It was clear she had lost her son years ago, and her mind had refused to let go of hope. But he also didn't want to treat her like she was foolish. Her faith, though fragile, was pure. He said kindly, "You must have loved him a lot." Clara nodded. "More than life itself." He stayed there for a few moments, then tipped his hat. "If you need anything, ma'am, you can always find me at the station. I'll check on you from time to time." She smiled gently. "Thank you, Sheriff. But I'll be fine. I just need to wait." When he walked away, Tom felt a strange heaviness in his chest. He couldn't stop thinking about her lonely figure sitting under the streetlight, holding on to hope when the rest of the world had moved on. Over the next few days, he tried to find information about her. He looked through town records, asked the local church, and even checked missing person reports from years back. But there was almost nothing about Clara Evans. It was as if she had appeared one day and made that park bench her home. Night after night, she was there again. Sometimes she wrote in her notebook. Sometimes she just sat in silence, watching the stars. Tom began leaving small things for her: a thermos of coffee, a warm blanket, a pair of gloves when winter came. Each time, she smiled and thanked him quietly. She never asked for more. One snowy night, when the town was covered in a white blanket and most people stayed inside, Tom found her still sitting there, brushing snow off the bench. He walked up and said gently, "You'll catch a cold if you keep sitting out here, Clara." She looked up at him, her cheeks pink from the cold, and said, "I can't go home, Sheriff." "Not tonight. Maybe he'll come when the stars are bright like this." Tom sat beside her for the first time. The bench was cold, but he didn't care. He wanted to keep her company. "You really believe he'll come back?" he asked softly. Her eyes sparkled under the faint light. "I know he will. A mother always knows. Maybe he lost his way. Maybe he's still trying to find me. But he'll come." Tom sighed quietly. "What if he can't, Clara?" She turned to him with a sad smile. "Then I'll still be here when he tries. Because I promised I'd wait." They sat together in silence for a while, watching the snow fall gently over the playground. The swings creaked softly in the wind. The sound felt like a memory, faint but alive. Before leaving, Tom asked, "What's in that notebook you always carry?" She held it close and said, "It's letters to him. I write one every night. I tell him what the day was like, how the stars looked, how the town changed. I don't know if he'll ever read them, but it makes me feel closer to him." Tom nodded. He understood. It wasn't madness. It was love trying to survive after heartbreak. When dawn came, Clara stood up slowly, brushed the snow from her coat, and whispered toward the empty swings. "Not tonight. Maybe tomorrow." Then she walked away, her footprints fading behind her. That morning, Sheriff Tom couldn't let it go. He went to his office, opened old files, and searched for any case that matched what Clara had said. After hours of reading through dusty papers, he finally found something: a missing child named Ethan Evans, reported 8 years ago after leaving to visit his father in the nearby town of Crestview. The case had gone cold. The boy had never been found. Tom sat back in his chair, staring at the faded photo of a smiling boy with curly hair and bright eyes. He whispered, "So that's her son." He realized then that every night, while the world slept, Clara was keeping her promise. She wasn't just waiting for her child. She was holding on to hope in a world that had long forgotten her pain. That night, as Tom watched her from his patrol car again, he made a silent promise. He would find out what really happened to Ethan. No mother should have to wait forever without knowing the truth. And maybe, if he could uncover it, Clara could finally find peace. The next morning, Sheriff Tom sat at his desk with the old file open in front of him. The picture of young Ethan Evans smiled back from the faded page. The boy had been reported missing 8 years ago during a winter storm. The report said he was supposed to take a short bus trip to Crestview to visit his father, but he never arrived. The search back then had found nothing. No clear trail, no witnesses, just silence and snow. Tom closed the file and rubbed his eyes. Something didn't feel right. He had seen hundreds of missing person reports, but this one carried a strange weight. Maybe it was the sight of Clara waiting every night for her boy. Maybe it was the quiet promise she had made to herself to never stop believing. He decided to start again from the beginning. He called the small sheriff's office in Crestview and asked if they had any record of a boy named Ethan Evans. The clerk said she'd check. A few hours later, she called back and said, "Sheriff, we did have a report that winter." A child was found near the old highway, cold but alive. He was taken to a hospital for a few days, then placed in a foster home. His name was never confirmed because he couldn't remember much. They called him Eli. Tom's heart began to beat faster. Eli, he repeated. Do you still have records of that boy? Yes, Sheriff, the woman said. He's 20 now. He was adopted by a family here. Nice folks. He works at the mechanic shop on Main Street. Tom thanked her and wrote everything down. The moment he hung up, he sat back, stunned. Could this Eli be Ethan Evans? Could Clara's boy have survived all this time, living just one town away while his mother waited every night? He decided to find out. The next morning, Tom drove to Crestview. The town was quiet and small, with one main road and a few old shops. He found the mechanic shop easily. Inside, the smell of oil and tools filled the air. A young man with curly hair and bright eyes looked up as Tom entered. Morning, Sheriff. Need a tune-up? The young man said with a friendly smile. Tom looked at him closely. The boy's face was older, but those same bright eyes from the photo in the file were unmistakable. His heart trembled as he said softly, Are you Eli? The young man nodded. Yes, sir. That's what everyone calls me. Tom hesitated, then asked, Do you remember anything before you came here? Before you were adopted? Eli looked down for a moment, his hands tightening on a wrench. Not much, he said quietly. They said I was found by the highway after a storm. I remember being in a bus, maybe, and a woman's voice singing. But it's all blurry. Sometimes I dream about it. I see stars, and someone telling me to come back when the stars are the same. Tom's breath caught. That was the same thing Clara had said. The same words. He took a deep breath and said gently, Eli, that woman might still be waiting for you. The young man looked confused. Waiting for me? Who? Tom smiled softly. Your mother. For a long moment, Eli didn't speak. His hands trembled slightly. My mother? He whispered. I thought I didn't have one. I mean, nobody ever came for me. Tom explained everything carefully. The file, the missing report, and how a woman named Clara Evans still came to the same park bench every night, waiting for her son who never returned. As Tom spoke, Eli's eyes filled with tears. He covered his mouth with his hand, trying to understand. She's alive? He asked finally, his voice shaking. She's alive, Tom said softly. And she never gave up on you. Eli leaned against the workbench, his heart pounding. He whispered, She used to tell me to look at the stars when I was scared. She said, if I got lost, the stars would guide me home. Tom nodded. She still believes that. Eli closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, they were wet with tears. Can you take me to her? He asked. Tom smiled faintly. That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. They drove back to Maple Ridge together that evening. The road between the two towns was quiet, lined with fields and fading light. The stars were beginning to appear, one by one, across the darkening sky. When they reached the park, the old streetlights still flickered near the same bench. And there, as always, sat Clara Evans, her blue coat wrapped around her, her notebook in her hands, and her eyes turned toward the stars. Tom parked the truck and turned to Eli. She's right there. Eli's hands were shaking. I don't know what to say, he whispered. Just be yourself, Tom said softly. She's been waiting a long time to see you. Eli stepped out of the truck slowly. The sound of his footsteps on the path made Clara look up. At first, she didn't move. She blinked, as if her mind was playing tricks on her. Then she stood up slowly, her notebook slipping from her hands and landing on the ground. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. Eli took a step closer. Mom? He said softly. Clara's lips parted and her breath caught. "Ethan?" she whispered, her voice trembling. He nodded, tears spilling down his cheeks. "It's me, Mom. I came back. I'm sorry it took me so long." Clara covered her mouth, unable to speak. Then she ran forward and wrapped her arms around him, holding him as if she'd never let go again. Her tears soaked his shoulder, and his hands clung to her coat. For a few moments, there were no words, just the sound of two hearts finding each other after years apart. Sheriff Tom stood at a distance, his eyes shining. He had seen many things in his life, some sad, some hopeful, but nothing like this. The sight of that woman who had waited through every cold night and every lonely year, finally holding her son again, was something he'd never forget. Clara whispered through her tears, "I knew you'd come. I told you I'd be here when the stars looked the same." Eli smiled through his tears. "You never stopped waiting." "I never could," she said softly. "You were my heart." They sat on the bench together for a long time, talking under the starlight. Eli told her about the storm, about waking up in the hospital, about the family that raised him. Clara listened to every word as if it were a gift. She told him how she came to the park every night, writing him letters she never thought he'd read. When Eli saw the notebook on the ground, he picked it up and opened it. Page after page was filled with her handwriting letters addressed to him, full of love, hope, and stories of all the nights she had waited. He could barely read through the tears in his eyes. "I kept them for you," she said softly, "in case you came back." Eli smiled and hugged her again. "I'm here now, Mom, and I'm not going anywhere." The night breeze moved through the trees as if whispering along with them. For the first time in 8 years, Clara's heart was at peace. The bench that had once been a place of waiting was now a place of reunion. As they sat there, Sheriff Tom quietly walked back to his truck. He didn't want to interrupt the moment. He looked up at the sky, where the stars shone bright and clear, and whispered, "Some promises really do last forever." Later that night, when Tom drove by the park one last time, he saw them still there, mother and son sitting together, laughing softly, the notebook open between them. And for the first time, the park didn't look lonely anymore. The next morning, when the townsfolk walked by, they saw Clara smiling in the daylight, her eyes full of life again. She wasn't just the quiet woman on the bench anymore. She was a mother who had found her miracle. And from that day on, she still came to the bench sometimes, but not to wait anymore. She came to sit beside her son, to talk, to laugh, and to remind everyone who passed by that hope never dies if you keep believing.